Hi friends, Paul Caminiti here with the Institute for Bible Reading and one of the creators of Immerse, the Bible reading experience. I want to begin by congratulating you, commending you, thanking you for volunteering to be a group host for Immerse. And in this video, I'm going to share some ideas that hopefully will alleviate any early jitters that you might have, and share with you what other hosts around the country have been learning as they facilitate great Immerse experiences. We're going to cover three things: preparing yourself to be an Immerse host, introducing your group to Immerse, and then the actual facilitation experience. So we start by preparing yourself to be an Immerse host. And I'm happy to tell you that there is a stellar resource available to you, the Immerse Group Host Guide. It's on the immersebible.com site. It's comprehensive. It includes everything that we're going to talk about in this video and more. And before we actually get into the weeds and into the details, I think it's important for you to catch your breath a minute. Think about the importance of the big Immerse vision, to understand how Immerse is truly unique and unlike any studies that you've ever done before. First of all, Immerse, you'll discover, is a reading Bible versus a reference Bible. It really is stunning that for the last 400 years, the only Bibles available to us have been reference Bibles, Bibles that had chapters and verses, and later study notes and outlines, all designed for the primary purpose of looking things up, but not really designed for a great reading experience, which explains maybe why it's been hard to read the Bible. Reading the Bible and removing all of the artificial additives, chapters and verses, they're new technology. They weren't invented until late in the Bible's history. Chapters really didn't appear till the 13th century, and believe it or not, verse numbers were the invention of one man in the 16th century. Before that, Bibles were a clean text, essentially reading Bibles. So removing chapters and verses is much more than a cosmetic change. We've given the Bible an unmakeover, and it absolutely changes positively the reading experience. And I will tell you this in advance, your people are going to love reading their Immerse Bibles. So for fun, we took a famous literary work and we laid over the top of it kind of a reference Bible system just to demonstrate the impact of that format and how hard it would be to read something like that. The format matters. Please understand that we are not trying to belittle reference Bibles. They play a vital role. But think about it, for 400 years, reading Bibles weren't even available. But now, the last 10 years, reading Bibles have been birthed. Reading Bibles like Immerse, which of course is our favorite, and all around the world, people who believe in the Bible are saying a big yes to this fresh invention, which of course is really just a return to the Bible's roots. There's a second way in which Immerse is unique, and that is that Immerse is built on a book club model versus a Bible study model. Book clubs are less prescriptive and more organic. They don't have homework or participants' guides. People simply read the allotted scripture for that week and then come together for grown-up conversations. And quickly, you're going to find that the participants come to understand that there really is a night and day difference between book club conversations and Bible study conversations. So for example, think of a typical Bible study question. How many times did Jesus refer to himself as the bread of life in John 6? Versus the Immerse open-ended question, what stood out to you in this week's reading? The one question is going to invite a parrot-like response. The other is going to break that conversation wide open. It's going to be more honest. It's going to be more nuanced. The Bible is a nuanced book and far more robust. One of my favorite comments ever was from a woman who had attended every imaginable Bible study. And after Immerse, she couldn't stop talking about the vast difference between the two experiences. And at the end, she got a little wistful and she said, where has this experience been all of my Christian life. And why weren't we invited into it earlier? So to prepare yourself, it's important that you understand that Immerse is, again, not just the next thing. This is a visionary approach to the Bible, not just another program coming down the pike where the Bible has been slightly tweaked. Immersed is, as one pastor expressed it, a revolution. So get ready for a revolution. How are you going to introduce your group to Immerse? The first and obvious thing is that you're going to want to introduce them to their new Immerse Bibles. This is not their grandmother's Bible, and so a tutorial is in order. Share with them your experience as you first began to peruse your own volume. Introduce them to the front matter and the back matter that unpack the rationale and the backstory for how we created the Immerse Bible, why we removed chapters and verses and other distractions that got in the way of good reading. It explains how reading Bibles are designed for reading, not looking things up, so that you can relax and read. There's a section there about how we rearranged the order of the books. That order was never ordained, and it was actually the establishment of the printing press that forced a standardized order. Well, we've messed with that a little bit in a way that makes more sense. There's also a fascinating section about how we combine books that were originally together but got split apart because they wouldn't all fit onto a single scroll. It's really kind of fascinating stuff, even for people who aren't Bible geeks. Give your group some time to discuss the new format and assure them that nothing has been left out. It's kind of a comical but common experience that people will check their real Bibles against their Immerse Bibles to make sure that nothing has been left out. And you can give them your full assurance and endorsement that Immerse is every bit as genuine and faithful to the text as their single volume Bible that says Holy Bible on the cover. Early on, people are going to ask the question, how in the world are we going to reference things? They've been used to referencing things by chapter and verse. And you can explain to them that instead of chapter and verse, you're going to use a page and paragraph reference system like any other book club. Now, we did make a concession, and in order to coordinate with reference Bibles, we created a chapter and verse range, and you'll find that in the corner of every page. Next, you'll want to introduce them to the wonderful Immerse ancillary tools. And the most prominent and popular tool is a brand new Immerse audio Bible, free, downloadable to all of the Immerse participants. It's ideal for commuters, for exercisers, and for people who prefer audio learning. It's been kind of comical. On more than one occasion, we've had pastors tell us that the audio Bible kept the men in their church in the game. Finally, we created weekly animated videos. Think of them as trailers for what the group will be reading the next week. A lot of groups use them as a way of closing their meeting and getting people jazzed for the next week. And because we don't want families with young kids left behind, we created the Immerse Family Guide. It has shorter readings, age-appropriate questions, been hugely popular. And of course, if you're an ebook lover, ebooks are available through your traditional ebook suppliers. Finally, let's talk about the actual facilitation of your Immerse group. First and foremost, it's important that you understand your role as a facilitator. It's very different than leading a Bible study where you're expected to be the resident expert or theologian. Remember, the goal of a Bible study is to find right answers. With Immerse, the goal is more about reading and losing yourself in the story. I can tell you this is going to take a lot of pressure off of you as the facilitator. In fact, when questions do come up, and they will, your stock answer should be, what does the group think? By the way, all of this is covered in your Immerse Group Hosts Guide. So how do you get started? It's probably best to have an introductory meeting before the 8-week campaign officially kicks off. Start by welcoming everybody, passing out their brand new Bibles. A good icebreaker is to go around the room, have people introduce themselves, and answer this question: what drew you to join an Immerse reading group? In that introductory meeting, remind everybody that you've agreed on a time frame, probably 60 to 90 minutes, and your commitment as a leader to honoring that time frame. There are going to be some things that you'll want to do each week. Each week you're going to want to open in prayer and invite the Holy Spirit to guide the conversation. Lots of groups begin with the carpet prayer that you'll find in the front of each Immerse volume. It's a good idea each week to invite people to generally share about their week's reading experience. This is especially helpful the first few weeks as you meet together and people are kind of getting their Immerse sea legs under them. They've been used to reading a chapter or two at a time, and this is a new experience. Ask people to share their reading rhythm. Did they read every day? Did they break their reading into 2 segments, maybe morning and evening? How many of them took advantage of the 2 grace days, the weekends, and used the weekends to catch up? Not unusual that some people will read the entire week's reading in a single sitting. How did they engage the audio Bible? What was the impact of reading without chapters and verses? This isn't designed to be formulaic, but it helps the group to hear what other members are experiencing and wrestling with. Next, you'll move to the 4 questions. You're not being asked to teach or to speak. And the genius of these open-ended questions is that there's not the threat of a wrong answer. There's no wrong answer to what stood out to you this week. Don't feel any sense of obligation to rush through all 4 questions. More often than not, groups never make it past the first question, what stood out to you this week? And that's fine. In time, the groups may come together and just launch in, as is true of all good book club experiences. Host leaders ask, how do I handle challenging questions? And it's easy to get freaked out that there's a question that will come up that you have no good answer for. My advice to you, don't get freaked out. Your role as a facilitator isn't to be the Bible answer man. If your pastor or your minister were in that group, there would be questions that they wouldn't be able to answer. It's absolutely lovely to realize that in the Jewish world, the world into which Jesus was born, that there was high value that was placed on good questions in and of themselves. A young student would come home from their rabbinical school, and the father wouldn't ask, what did you learn today? Instead, he would ask, did you ask any good questions? I have a friend who attended a Hebrew university in Israel, and he recalled that the rabbi assigned them one week to read the story of Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac, and then to come back to class with 100 questions about that story. You'll be surprised at how people will adapt. Some groups will come with their laptops open so they can look up Herod, king of Judea, that's referenced in Luke and other Gospels. I'd encourage you to keep a journal of the questions that are being asked. And if your whole church is doing Immerse, share these reoccurring questions with your pastoral staff. I love the creativity that's emerging from groups. And just recently, this wasn't something that we created. A group of students developed a way of categorizing questions for their Immerse group. So when a question came up, they would start talking and somebody might interrupt and say, is this an apple is this a banana or is it a coconut? An apple is a question that the group can, bite into on the spot. A banana probably needs peeling. Someone's going to have to Google, who was King Sargon of Assyria, that you read about in the prophets. Coconuts, well, coconuts are questions that we've been trying to answer for thousands of years, and we're probably not going to answer it in this session, but it's still worth discussing because of the value of good questions. Kudos to you for taking this on. Immerse is not going to be a cakewalk. It wasn't designed to be, but I can promise you, you'll have a sense of pioneering. You're going to forge streams and cross mountains that you've not crossed before. Over and over again, we hear leaders talking about Bible studies versus an Immerse book club. They talk about Bible studies are kind of like pulling teeth. Questions are asked and there's just crickets. And one of the great joys for us, and this is coming from all quarters, people telling us that the biggest problem that we're having with Immerse is shutting the groups down at the end of the allotted time frame. What a problem to have. So thank you for leading Immerse, and welcome to the movement.